In the year 762, on the western bank of the Tigris River, a city was born from a single man's ambition. The Caliph al-Mansur planted his staff into the earth of ancient Mesopotamia and declared that here, at the crossroads of the known world, would rise a capital unlike anything humanity had ever seen. He called it Madinat al-Salam, the city of peace. The world would come to know it simply as Baghdad. Within a single century, this city would grow from bare earth into the most intellectually vibrant metropolis on the planet, home to an institution so extraordinary that it would preserve and transform the entire course of human knowledge. This is the story of the House of Wisdom. To understand what Baghdad became, you first have to understand what the world looked like before it. Across the breadth of the 8th century, knowledge was fragmented, scattered like seeds across distant soils. In the libraries of Alexandria's memory, in the monasteries of Syria, in the philosophical schools of Persia, in the observatories of India, wisdom existed in isolation. No single place gathered it. No single civilization had yet dared to reach across every boundary of language, faith, and geography to ask a universal question. What does all of humanity know, and how can we know it better? The Abbasid Caliphate, newly risen to power in 750 CE, after overthrowing the Umayyads, was about to attempt exactly that. Al-Mansur's round city was an engineering marvel in its own right. Built in concentric circles with 4 grand gates facing the cardinal directions, it was designed by astronomers who consulted the stars before a single brick was laid. Records suggest that over 100,000 workers labored on its construction, and the result was a city of perfect geometric symmetry, its golden dome at the center visible for miles across the flat Mesopotamian plain. From the very beginning, Baghdad was a statement. This was a place where human reason and divine order met. But it was under al-Mansur's grandson, the Caliph Harun al-Rashid, and then most powerfully under Harun's son al-Mamun, who reigned from 813 to 833 CE, that the institution known as Bayt al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, transformed from a royal library into something the ancient world had never seen. A state-funded research institution, a translation bureau, an observatory, and a university all woven into one. Al-Mamun is the figure historians point to most often as the driving force behind its golden age. He was a caliph who reportedly engaged in philosophical debates, challenged his own scholars, and is said to have been visited in a dream by Aristotle himself, a dream that, whether true or legendary, perfectly captures his obsession with the classical world's knowledge. The translation movement that poured through the House of Wisdom was one of the most ambitious intellectual projects in human history. Scholars were dispatched to Byzantium, to India, to Persia, to wherever ancient manuscripts survived. The Caliph al-Mamun is said to have paid translators in gold equivalent to the weight of the books they translated. Greek works, Plato, Aristotle, Hippocrates, Galen, Euclid, Ptolemy, were rendered first into Syriac and then into Arabic. Persian astronomical tables and Indian mathematical treatises crossed the same threshold. The world's knowledge was being gathered under one roof, in one language, accessible to one civilization at the height of its confidence and curiosity. Among the giants who walked the halls of the House of Wisdom, one name stands above almost all others: Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. Born around 780 CE, al-Khwarizmi was a mathematician whose contributions would echo through every calculation made in the modern world. His treatise, Al-Kitab al-Muqtasar fi Hisab al-Jabr wal-Muqabala, the compendious book on calculation by completion and balancing, gave the world an entirely new discipline. We call it algebra, a word derived directly from al-Jabr in his title. When you solve for x in any equation today, you are following a method first systematized by a scholar sitting in 9th century Baghdad. And his name itself lives on in our language. The word algorithm is a Latin corruption of al-Khwarizmi. Alongside al-Khwarizmi, The House of Wisdom nurtured a constellation of minds that reads like a hall of fame of human intellectual achievement. Al-Kindi, known as the philosopher of the Arabs, worked to reconcile Greek philosophy with Islamic thought and made advances in cryptography, breaking coded messages through frequency analysis, a technique that would not be independently discovered in Europe for another 5 centuries. The Banu Musa brothers, 3 sons of a former highway robber-turned-scholar, produced extraordinary works on geometry and ingenious mechanical devices. Their Book of Ingenious Devices described over 100 machines, some of which qualify as early programmable automata. The astronomers of the House of Wisdom did not merely translate Ptolemy, they challenged him. Al-Mamun commissioned 2 geographic expeditions to measure the circumference of the Earth, and the results achieved a level of accuracy that would astonish any modern scientist aware of the instruments available at the time. Scholars here built instruments, refined them, argued over measurements, and produced astronomical tables of a precision that navigators would rely upon for centuries. The names of stars that sailors still use today, Aldebaran, Altair, Betelgeuse, are Arabic names, preserved from the observations made in Baghdad's Golden Age. Medicine, too, flourished under the House of Wisdom's influence. The works of Galen and Hippocrates were not simply copied, but interrogated, expanded, and corrected. Hunayn ibn Ishaq, a Nestorian Christian scholar who became one of the greatest translators of the era, produced Arabic and Syriac translations of almost every major Greek medical text, but he also contributed original observations of his own. The Baghdad of the 9th century had hospitals, bimaristans, that operated on principles of clinical observation that were centuries ahead of their European counterparts. This was a world in which faith, reason, and empirical inquiry were understood not as enemies, but as different expressions of a single drive toward truth. The physical world of the House of Wisdom itself is something historians continue to piece together, since no single building survives. Records suggest it was not one structure, but a complex of libraries, reading rooms, and workspaces situated near the Caliph's palace in the heart of the Round City. It held, by some accounts, hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, a number almost incomprehensible in an age when every book was copied by hand. Scholars came from across the Islamic world and beyond. Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, Muslims. What united them was not their faith, but their willingness to follow an argument wherever it led. This pluralism was not incidental to the House of Wisdom's success. It was its engine. Baghdad at its peak, in the early 9th century, may have held a population of over 1 million people, making it the largest city in the world outside of Tang Dynasty China. Its markets traded in spices from Indonesia, silk from China, ivory from Africa, and manuscripts from everywhere. The Tigris was thick with boats. Its streets were loud with debate in a dozen languages. To stand in Baghdad in 830 CE was to stand at the center of the world, in a city that knew exactly what it was and reveled in the knowledge. But history does not remain still for long. The Abbasid Caliphate began its long contraction through the 9th and 10th centuries as political fragmentation and rival powers eroded central authority. The House of Wisdom itself continued to function for generations, its influence spreading outward even as Baghdad's political star dimmed. The knowledge that had been gathered, translated, and expanded there flowed westward into the Islamic world of Andalusia and Sicily, where it would eventually reach medieval Europe, arriving like a tide carrying seeds that would flower into the Renaissance. When European scholars in the 12th and 13th centuries began translating Arabic texts into Latin, what they found were not simply old Greek ideas. They found those ideas transformed, corrected, expanded, and deepened by centuries of Islamic scholarship. The Europe that produced Copernicus and Galileo was reading, in part, the work begun in Baghdad. The end, when it came brutally. In 1258, the Mongol forces of Hulagu Khan besieged Baghdad. The city fell in a catastrophe that contemporaries struggled to describe in any language adequate to the scale of destruction. The Caliph al-Mustasim was executed. The canals of Mesopotamia ran dark with the ink of manuscripts thrown into the Tigris by the tens of thousands. Historians debate the full extent of the destruction, and some scholars argue that the legacy of the House of Wisdom had already dispersed widely enough to survive, carried in copies and memories across the Islamic world. But the city that had been the center of human knowledge for nearly 5 centuries was, in those terrible weeks, broken beyond recovery. And yet the House of Wisdom cannot truly be destroyed, because it lives in the consequences of its existence. Every time a physician follows an evidence-based method, every time an engineer solves an equation, every time a navigator looks up at a star whose Arabic name has crossed 1,000 years to reach them, the House of Wisdom endures. It endures in the word algebra, in the concept of the algorithm, in the understanding of the cosmos that Baghdad's astronomers refined with such meticulous care. It endures as a proof, written in the language of history, that human curiosity has no borders, that knowledge belongs to no single people, and that civilization advances when it dares to gather all that the world knows and ask what more can be learned. Baghdad lit a flame that the centuries have never fully extinguished, and that flame still illuminates every corner of the world it helped to build. If you found this journey through history fascinating, there are many more stories waiting for you on this channel.